All right. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to IVA 614 Global Marketing.
Good evening, Doc.
Good evening.
This is our 10th session, and in today's session, we will be looking at global market entry modes and strategies. Last week, we had a good discussion on the current academic discourse in the area of the market selection strategies of firms around the world, and it was very eye-opening for us to appreciate how that plays out in addition to the theory that we had learned previously in that regard. So today we would be looking specifically at the modes and the strategies that global marketing firms utilize in entering these markets that they have selected. And as usual, by the end of the session, there are certain learning outcomes we hope to achieve. The first one is to be able to identify and classify different market entry modes and strategies. The second one would be to be able to explore different approaches to the choice of entry mode, and then to be able to identify the factors to consider when selecting a global market entry strategy. So these are the three main lessons we would have learned by the end of today's session. In absence of any comments or suggestion, we'll go straight ahead and start the lecture. But during the session, please feel free to draw my attention if you have any question you want to ask or any contribution you want to make to be able to facilitate the discussion in class. All right, so we'll begin. Let's start by talking about global market entry modes. So what is a market entry mode? It is basically an institutional arrangement that is necessary for the entry of a company's products, services, technology, human and financial capital into a foreign market. Now, this explanation, as we can see, captures aspects of both product sales and the sales of service firms. Hence, the inclusion of products, service, technology, and financial capital in a foreign market.
I said you were not coming, so.
Sorry about that. So like I was saying, this explanation captures issues that have to do with the export of physical products into foreign markets, as well as the export of services by service firms into foreign markets. And there are three main types of global market entry modes that are available for firms to choose from. The first one being export modes, the second one being intermediate modes, and the third one being hierarchical modes. We are going to take each of these one after the other and break them down, starting with export modes. But before we do that, it is very important for us to appreciate the classification of these three entry modes along a continuum, such that a firm in choosing either export modes, intermediate modes, also known as contractual modes, or hierarchical modes, also known as investment modes, places themselves at a position along this continuum we can see on our screen that either makes them highly prone to externalizing or highly prone to internalizing. So based on the diagram we are looking at, when a firm decides to go strictly via export modes, they are choosing to 100% externalize their export activities into global markets. And based on the explanation, with export modes, the firm has a limited amount of control. However, they run into less risk and have a very high level of flexibility when they choose to utilize export modes due to the 100% externalizing nature of this entry mode. However, should they choose to go into foreign markets or global markets using intermediate modes, because of the contractual nature of the modes of market entry under this concept, they have to practice shared control with other partners. And in doing so, they end up having to share the risk as well. And that brings about what we refer to as split ownership, because they cannot be able to completely and wholly control the global marketing process. They do so in conjunction with partners in foreign markets or in host countries. Nonetheless, should they choose to go with hierarchical modes, which are also known as investment modes, they are choosing to 100% internalize the whole process of global marketing. And in that case, they are investing a lot of their resources, hence the name investment modes, into the global marketing process. As such, they have very high level of control because they have invested into putting in place the measures and the processes to go global. But at the same time, too, they are incurring a high level of risk because they are investing resources. And should there be a failure or should things not go well, they run the risk of losing everything or losing a substantial amount of their investment. At the same time, too, hierarchical modes are low in flexibility because they do not have the freedom that export modes grant you, where 100% of what you are doing is in the hands of external people. So you have the freedom and the flexibility to do a number of things. But once everything is internalized, everything depends on you. And you have very little wiggle room in that regard. So that is how we can place the different entry modes along a continuum. So let's take them one after the other and break them down, looking at the different strategies that are captured under each one of these entry modes. Let's start with export entry modes and strategies. Now, when it comes to export entry modes, they involve the firm's products and services being manufactured in the domestic market or in the domestic country. At the same time, too, it can be manufactured in a third country and then transferred directly or indirectly to the host market. So in that case, we are saying that it can be owned by a domestic company. However, they can choose to locate their manufacturing plant in another country for whatever reason it is, and export directly from where they are in the home country or from the manufacturing plants that they have in that third country directly to the host markets that they want to send it to, or do so indirectly through other partners and intermediaries. Now, export modes are the most common form of international market entry, as we can witness all around us, especially with SMEs and other firms that are less experienced with the process of going global or going international. And most of the time, it is led by unsolicited orders from foreign buyers. Like I said, some firms did not set out to become international or global marketers. However, they were situated in their domestic country, doing their own thing. And then out of the blue, they get a huge order from a buyer in a foreign country who is requesting that they find a way of getting these products to them in their destination or in their location within that host country. And once the firm is able to achieve that successfully, it opens the doors for the firm to consider actually selling to people within this host country, given that they have been able to successfully fulfill an unsolicited order to a buyer in that host country. It could also come about as a result of a customer they were serving within the domestic market, perhaps relocating to an international or foreign location and then placing an order from there. Now, even though the customer is domestic, the customer's geographic location has changed to a foreign location. Hence, serving that same customer now does not count as domestic marketing, but rather as international marketing, because it is transcending geographic borders. And that is another way by which firms are triggered into going global or going international via export moves. So based on these two reasons, among others that we have discussed in the past, a firm would decide to begin considering the process of sending their products and services internationally for marketing and for sale. And almost always the first point of call for firms who are now trying to go global is the export modes. And that is why we are considering that set of modes first. Now, exporting can be organized in a variety of ways depending on the number and type of intermediaries that a firm has to work with. Sometimes a firm may not have any intermediary at all. And based on that, there are three major types of export modes that can be identified. The first one being indirect export, the second one being direct export, and the third one being cooperative export. And we'll take them one after the other, starting with indirect export. Now, indirect export is when the manufacturing firm in the domestic or home market does not take direct care of their exporting activities. So they rather put it in the hands of a third party, say an export house or a trading company or an agent who will perform the export activities on their behalf, most of the time without their direct involvement in the process. Now, in direct exporting, the sale is like a domestic sale, right? Because the firm is not really engaging in global marketing. They are mainly dealing with this intermediary or third party who is also located in their domestic market. And they are the ones who will end up carrying the product from the manufacturer to the foreign market. And that is why we say that indirect exporting to a large extent is like performing or conducting a domestic sale, because the firm itself does not end up sending the products abroad. It is done on their behalf by this third party or intermediary. And on the basis of that, there are three main types of strategies under indirect exports. The first one is the strategy of using an export buying agent. The second one is by using an export management company. And the third one is by piggybacking. There are quite a number of them, but for our purposes, we will consider these three. Starting with the export buying agent. Who is this export buying agent? The export buying agent is a representative of foreign buyers who resides in the exporter's home country. So like I said, it's more like a domestic sale, because the manufacturer is still dealing with a third party or an intermediary who is still located within the confines of their geographic region. And the agent here receives a commission from the buyers, being the people in the host country or the foreign country, for their efforts in helping them to be able to acquire the products from the manufacturer and getting it to them in their foreign location. So the exporting manufacturer in this case is not directly involved in determining the terms of the purchase, how much it should be sold for, how it should be packaged or sent to the buyers in the host market. All these details are worked out between the buying agent and the buyer in the overseas market. Hence, the lack of direct involvement between the manufacturer of the products in the domestic market and the foreign buyer, because everything is handled by the export agent who deals directly with the buyer in the host country. And that is it for the export buying agent. Next, we can talk about export. Yes, Godwin, come.
So does it mean that the agent is just like somebody who just the items just pass through his hands, but he has no say in the price? As to let's say I am an agent for someone, they bring their things, I can't, let's say, add any price or anything to it, or could it also be that the agent can also...
Based on the explanation, the agent here has some wiggle room, because the manufacturer does not deal directly with the buyer. So the agent can add on to the price, and the manufacturer cannot say or do anything about it.
Okay.
Because he's not directly involved in dealing with the buyer.
Okay, thank you.
Doc.
Yes, Mr. Samasano.
So does it mean that the agent buys from the manufacturer direct and sells to somebody else?
He doesn't buy from the manufacturer. He's just a facilitator. Yes.
He said so. Somebody is commissioned by somebody to buy the products.
Good.
Okay.
So he doesn't take ownership of the products at all.
Okay. Agreed. So what of if the person buys from the manufacturer and commissions this agent to come for it? Is it the same thing?
No, it's not.
Ghana,
that person is not an agent, because in this case, the buyer is dealing directly with the manufacturer.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Christians, please come in. Thank you, Mr.
Good evening, Doc. I'm into a business like that, so I was a bit confused.
Yes.
We are distributors for a lot of Chinese brands. So what we do is that we buy the goods from them, their machines actually.
Yeah,
then we put our margin on it. We are not agents. We are kind of distributors for them. So how different is that from agents? Because we don't do commissions.
Very soon you see where you are.
Okay.
We talk
All
about
right.
a bit down the ladder. So as soon as we get there, I'll need you to please help me to explain with your example to the class.
That's okay. That's fine. Thank
But
you.
I hope Crescens is your actual name.
Yeah, that's my name. Thanks.
Awesome. Yes, please.
And he's a man.
Yes, please. That is actually not unheard of. We had a student in our department some years back called Hillary.
A man.
Yes, a man.
Please, where does he come
Very
from?
famous in the business school.
Yeah, Hillary. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know a Catholic priest called Hillary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unisex.
Okay. All right. So that was just for the export agent. Now we are on the export management company or the export house. Now these are independent companies that are set up to act as specialist export departments for a range of companies. The only caveat here is that the companies that they represent have to be non-competing. So they can't be export agents for companies who are selling the same products in the same categories, right? And they are able to thrive because of the knowledge that they have when it comes to the local purchasing practices and the trade regulations in the markets that the exporter or the manufacturer is trying to get into. And that is why the manufacturer would want to use them, being the export management company, and their experience to be able to penetrate into that market that they are unfamiliar with and do not know much about. So in this case, all correspondence with the buyers and the contracts and everything are negotiated in the name of the manufacturer, right? However, the export management company is the go-between between the buyers in the host market and the manufacturer. However, the manufacturer is always kept in the loop about everything that is going on. So all the contracts that are negotiated, all the quotations and the orders and everything are subject to the confirmation or agreement of the manufacturer, because the export management company is acting on their behalf, but is bringing them in contact with the buyer as a go-between. So that is it for the export management company / export house. Then we can, yes.
Please, so let me try and get a clear explanation of this. So
yes.
Let's say there's a company which sells, let's say, phones, right, in China.
Yes.
And I approach them that I can help them internationalize.
Yes.
Right. I'll be a distributor for them here. Would that qualify for what we are talking about?
You say distributor. Distributors take ownership of the products that they sell.
Yes. Okay.
Export management companies don't take ownership of products.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Okay. All right. So moving on to piggybacking.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, Ivy.
Please, I want to ask a question.
Please go ahead.
With the institution, the exporting institution, is a particular product that they export, or they can
export a variety of products. They are just an exporting department, so they can export so many things. The caveat is that they shouldn't be exporting for companies who sell the same thing because of conflict of interest and competing interests.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they are stuck to one.
Yes.
Okay, but they can do a different product for a different company.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Doc.
You're welcome. Okay, so if there are no more, we'll continue with piggybacking. All right, so when we talk about piggybacking, we say it occurs when one producer, who is known as the carrier, right, which already operates in certain foreign markets, helps another fellow producer or manufacturer who is export inexperienced, and we will refer to them as the rider, and they sell their goods alongside their own in the foreign market. by this arrangement, the rider is able to use the carrier's established export facilities and contacts and subsidiaries in the foreign market to aid their entry into that foreign market. So that you don't have to lift a finger in terms of what happens in the foreign market. They just have to have an agreement with the carrier to carry their goods to that foreign market and sell in their name. Now, the carrier either receives a commission for what they are doing, or alternatively, they will buy the products from the manufacturer, take ownership of it, and act as an independent distributor. Christians, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. Does your job work in a similar way?
Yeah, exactly. But we do more than just putting a margin or commission on it.
So that means that you are not carriers. You are another form.
We handle after. Yes, it's true. We handle after sales services as well.
Good. So
okay.
we'll come to you. Yes. Thank you, Christian.
You're welcome.
Good. So you realize that when the thing stops at just sales and adding a margin, it's piggybacking. When it goes beyond that, it's another form of distributor, which we are going to come to very soon. So piggybacking is mainly just about marketing and selling, full stop. So they just market and they sell the products and then either put a margin on it when they take ownership of it or collect a commission from the manufacturer for carrying their products to that foreign market. Now there's a caveat here, which is that the products that are going to be sold by the carrier for the rider should not be directly competing with the products that the carrier is selling. So there should be non-competitive products and products that are complementary or allied to each other. Otherwise, it will defeat the whole purpose of piggybacking. It will be like the carrier is shooting themselves in the leg by carrying the products of their direct competitor into a foreign market. So that is the caveat for piggybacking. The product that the rider wants the carrier to send into the foreign market on their behalf should not be in direct competition with what the carrier is selling. And that is it for piggybacking. And brings us to the end of indirect export. Now let's talk about direct exports, the second strategy that export moves. Yes, Nadia.
Please, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, with regards to the indirect export, the export house.
Yeah.
So trade houses like, let's say the export trade houses like Ghana Trade Center,
yeah,
do they have any role in this? Or yeah, are they related to?
What does the Ghana Trade Center do, Nadia? Briefly.
Okay, with what I know, they are supposed to assist the medium-scale enterprises to export their products abroad.
Good. And that is what export management companies do. So they assist them with correspondence, right? To negotiate their terms, negotiate contracts, get orders, quotations, all that.
Exactly.
Good. But they do not take ownership of the product.
At all.
Yes. So that's an export house.
Then what about the logistic companies, like the shipping and logistic companies, who also do some kind of exporting on behalf of companies?
Okay, so that one is a bit more complicated. We'll get to a point where we talk about upstream and downstream distribution, which goes more into the logistics of exporting. So perhaps when we get there, it will be a bit clearer.
Okay.
All right. Doc, I think I'll add, is it drop shipping or something? I think Amazon has something like that.
Yeah.
It also qualifies for what we are talking about. Like
yeah, they are a kind of intermediary that facilitates in distribution.
Yes.
Good. And they are more of downstream.
Oh, okay.
So we will get into that discussion a bit later on in the session. So like hold that thought, and then when we get there, we will slide that. Okay. So that brings us to the end of indirect export. Now to direct export. Now, direct export, unlike indirect export, occurs when the manufacturer sells directly to an importer or buyer that is located in the foreign market area. So they do not need any third party in their domestic location to be a front for them. They will directly deal with whoever the buyer or the importer is in the foreign market. And it normally happens when exporters have grown more confident about exporting to foreign locations. And with this experience comes the ability or the network of good overseas contacts. They have done good marketing research. They have experience in handling documentation and transportation and designing marketing mix strategies based on what they have learned from their experience perhaps in the indirect exporting phase. So with direct exports, they now feel that they have the gravitas and the experience to undertake all these activities by themselves. So they usually deal directly with agents in the foreign location and distributors in the foreign location to help them sell their products in the market, rather than using a domestic intermediary to help them get to that foreign location. Now, under direct export, we can talk about a number of types of exporters. One is distributors or importers, and I think this is where Christian's company comes in. They are exclusive representatives of the company and are generally the sole importers of the company's products in their market. And unlike agents, they take title to the goods, finance the inventories, bear the risk of their operations, and they are able to determine how the product should be sold, where it should be sold, the price at which it should be sold, right? Which is not done by agents, like we have established. And in many cases, the distributors own and operate their own wholesale and retail establishments, their own warehouses, their own repair facilities, after sales service facilities, among others, which goes beyond what the piggybackers do. Christians, are you there?
Hello?
Yes. So this is more spot on to what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is
good. So you are imported.
Exactly what we do.
Good.
Yeah.
So this company does not work with any other distributor in Ghana.
No, but can I come in, please?
Yes, please come in.
Okay, so what we do is that most of the time we don't go in for exclusive distributorship.
Okay.
Because of the terms. Because
yes.
Once you're exclusive, there's a target for you to meet.
Yes.
And sometimes it's very difficult to do that. So we do a normal distributorship where you can also take distributorship for other brands.
Okay.
Okay. So in China, for instance, we have like 5 brands that we sell.
Okay.
But the caveat is that if you are selling, let's say, a wheel loader from a Chinese company, you are not supposed to sell another wheel loader from any other brand.
And non-competitive.
You know, so, exactly. So you need to stick to that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's funny. If even you leave them, you have up to like 2 years not to sell any other brand.
Yeah.
You know, before. So it's a bit complicated. And the difficult aspect of this is that you have to handle your after-sales services.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is your servicing and your spare parts stock and maintenance and co. With less support from them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a bit capital intensive, but it's a very good business.
Yeah. 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 And on the basis of that, we realized that it, like he said, it's you have to commit a bit more than you would if you were undertaking, say, an indirect export strategy like piggyback. Because the piggybackers are not entitled to do after sales service and everything on their own.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Christian.
You're welcome.
Ellen, please come in.
Okay, I wanted to give a scenario at work and see if it qualifies to
please
be.
Go ahead. We can think of it together.
So in Nestle, we have some countries that we are not established as an operating company. There are some occasions where we've been established there, but we've seen that it's not worth it, so we close those markets.
Okay, before you go ahead. We mentioned what this is referred to. When a firm goes into a foreign country and it's not working, and they fold up and they retreat. Please, what did we refer to it as? Ellen, before you go ahead quickly, I want to check if members remember. Ellen, do you remember yourself?
I asked that question myself. I don't remember.
Please, does anyone remember? When a firm goes international and things are not working out and they reverse, we talked about it under Uppsala's internationalization theory as one of the critiques, that firms will not always progressively go international.
Born against.
Anyone?
Born against.
No.
Pull out.
No. Anyone?
Contraction.
No. Anyone? You can't remember. It starts with a DE.
De-internationalize.
Thank you. De-internationalization.
Yeah.
Okay, Ellen, please go on.
Okay, so sometimes we go into these markets and it's not worth it, so we fold up.
Yeah.
And then we have key, we call them customers in our books.
Yeah.
So how we treat them is, for example, we used to be in Togo and Mali within the region, but it wasn't worth it, so we folded up. So what we do is that upon request of the customers, we have an establishment which we term one face to customer. So their nearest affiliate market to, for example, Togo and Mali is Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
So manufacturing, Nestle manufacturing companies would ship directly to, for example, customers in Togo, customers in Mali.
Yes.
And then Burkina Faso would bill these customers. So they would now act like Nestle in these countries, distributing Nestle products.
Good. But these,
and they are also in charge of their operations.
Good.
But the only thing is, if there's an issue with a particular SKU in terms of maybe customer complaints or something,
Good.
we step in.
Good. I will refer to that as a sales subsidiary, because the Burkina Faso establishment is also owned by Nestle, isn't it?
Yeah, but they are just billing them.
Yes, so they are just about sales.
Yes.
And we refer to them as sales subsidiaries, which we will explain very soon.
But what happens to the customers in Togo and Mali?
They are still getting their products, aren't they?
Please come again.
They are still getting their products, aren't they?
Yes. So they are now there. Yes, they are now there, like Nestle in their markets, sort of.
They are not Nestle. They are just selling your products.
Exactly.
There. So, and they buy it from you.
Yes.
So once they bought it, you have no further dealings with them, do you?
No, unless there's an issue with the product. No.
Exactly. So they don't represent Nestle. The Burkina Faso office that bills them in your name is who represents Nestle.
Exactly.
Good. So in that case, you are using your sales subsidiary in Burkina Faso to service the Togo market.
Exactly.
Yes. So that is what it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else? Okay. So let's proceed. Apart from the distributors/importers, we can also talk about foreign-based agents. Now, foreign-based agents behave somewhat like the export agent, only that they are located in the host country. So they are an independent company that sells to customers on behalf of the manufacturer, who is in the domestic market. And usually the agent will not see or stock the product, just like the agent. They act as a go-between, just like the export agent does. The only difference between these two is that one is located in the home country of the manufacturer, and the other one is located in the host country where the items are being exported to. So the foreign agent basically acts as a go-between for the exporting company or the manufacturer in the home market, and then the wholesalers and retailers who are buying in the host country or the importing country. Now, all inquiries and offers are received by the agent, and then he forwards them to the manufacturer, who will either accept or reject, and then he will ultimately fulfill the order to the buyer through the agent. Now, once the manufacturer accepts to fulfill the order, he will ship the merchandise directly to the customer. And all arrangements of financing and billing and credit and promotion are made directly between the exporter and the buyer. So the foreign-based agent, once again, is just a go-between who brings the buyer and the manufacturer together. Now, agents of this nature can either be exclusive or semi-exclusive, just like we learned from Crescents. If you are exclusive, it comes with a number of strict rules that you have to observe. And firms who go exclusive often miss out on a lot of other opportunities that they could benefit from being agents for other manufacturers in other locations. So you realize that a number of agents will prefer to be semi-exclusive, where they will not be exclusively for one company, but they will serve as agents for different companies, right? But there are a lot of exclusive agents who are widely used by firms when entering international markets, because most of the time, a firm who will enter an international market would want to make sure that they are getting the best service to expose their products adequately to their buyers in the host market. So going with a semi-exclusive agent means that the attention of the agents will be divided and will not be able to focus completely on their business, right? So most firms who are going international will prefer to deal with an exclusive agent rather than a semi-exclusive one. And one would ask, how does the agent benefit? The agent benefits by receiving a commission, which is usually 5 to 10% of the value of the deal that is struck, which is paid by the manufacturer on a pre-agreed basis. So that is it for the foreign-based agent. Ellen, you're asking, do airline agencies fall under this? Airline agencies in what sense? Can you please clarify?
They book tickets on behalf of these airlines.
Yes.
The money is actually going directly to the airlines.
Yes.
They just get a commission on top of it. If there are any issues with your flight or luggage or anything, it is the airline that is going to actually answer your question, not the agent.
In that case, is the agency in the home country of the airline, or is in another country?
It's in the host country.
Okay, then it's a foreign-based agent. So if we have a Ghanaian agent who is selling, say, Delta Airlines tickets, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So it's a foreign-based agent. Good example.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, aside from the foreign-based agents, we come to sales subsidiaries, which Ellen was trying to describe earlier. Now, as the foreign market grows, the firm's learning and experience will definitely increase to the point where they will find it necessary to have closer supervision over the sales of their products in the host country. So rather than putting the trust in agents and other intermediaries in the host country and hoping that they will do a good job of selling and marketing their products, the manufacturer will independently set up their own sales subsidiary in the host country and let that subsidiary handle all sales and marketing issues relating to buyers in the host country. Now, this may culminate in the establishment of a foreign sales office or a sales subsidiary to handle, like I said, all promotional and distributional aspects of the manufacturer's product. So this sales subsidiary, like we saw in the example that Ellen gave us, is owned by the company. And remember in the beginning when we were describing export, we talked about the fact that the export could be done directly from the home country or indirectly from a third country, which practicalizes what Ellen just told us, that the subsidiary in Burkina Faso that Nestle uses to sell to customers in the Togolese market is fully owned by Nestle. So it is an office that has been set up to handle sales of the Nestle product to customers in foreign markets where Nestle does not deem it profitable to set up an entire subsidiary. And that is a typical example of what sales subsidiaries are and the role that they play. Ellen, does it make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes sense.
Okay. Does anyone else have another example they want to give or any comment you want to make before we move on? Christians, please come in.
Thank you, Doc. Is there a possibility that a company could use all the three means of market entry?
Yes.
I.e. distributorship and then the agency and all of that.
Yes.
Because per experience, the Chinese we deal with, that's how they work. They appoint a distributorship in a particular country, okay, and then they bring. They also do have an agent.
Yes.
You know, for certain volumes of orders.
Yes.
So what those agents do basically is that they work with off-takers.
Yes.
So let's say somebody want to do like 20 units of equipment.
Yes.
So the agent can, work directly with the factory or the supplier in China.
Yes.
And on top of that, they do bring, they call it a salesperson from the factory, to come to the home country, let's say Ghana.
Yeah.
And for whatever funny reason, that person will also be doing sales.
Yes.
Okay, in getting them leads. So sometimes if you are dealing with these Chinese and you are not smart, they will always shortchange you and outsmart you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is just an experience, and that's why I'm asking whether it is possible to combine all the three.
And you realize that there's no part of the contracts and the agreements that they have with the distributors that this arrangement is flouting. Do you realize that? Yes. Everything is in line.
Exactly. So mostly when we are dealing with them, we like non-circumvent because if you are not careful, the contract is drafted by them. You can look through and all of that. But there are certain clauses. You can't change it, and you can't say that you don't want to sign with them, and they do it strictly to suit them. And you could realize that they want the market. That is the main intention. They don't want to do, it's not like they want to help you grow. So most of the time, dealing with them is not a win-win, kind of a mutually beneficial stuff. But for whatever reasons, you need them as well. Because the other markets, the other companies that are mostly European and Americans, apart from the fact that those equipments are very expensive, they don't have flexible payment terms. If you're dealing with Chinese, they can go out of their way to get you a credit line. So you just have to pay just a 10%. They ship the equipment to you, you sell it, put your margin on it, and you pay them back in installment for maybe, let's say, 2 years. That is actually how I started business. I was an agent. So what I was doing was that I was linking potential buyers to them directly in China. Okay, so I come to you, you have a project, we sign an off-taker agreement. You tell me you can pay this amount, I get a credit line for you. So you pay 5 to 10% of it, gets to China, they ship the goods to you. I make sure that you pay, you have a very potent repayment structure. Then I make sure that the payment is done. So because of flexibility, and now they are improving on their equipment. So, this is just an experience, just to share. Thank you.
But it's good you share. And you realize that from what you mentioned, because of the nature of the Chinese operation, there's a higher level of risk involved than with the Americans and the Europeans.
That's true. Yes.
So they need to do all these other arrangements to ensure that they can contain the risk that is involved so that they don't lose on all fronts.
Yes, that's very true. Thank you.
You're welcome, Christian, and thank you too for sharing. Okay, so that's it for sales subsidiaries. And then we can talk about 10 key projects. And I think in Africa, we see a lot of 10 key projects where they trick our governments into signing on to these agreements, and then eventually we become dependent and hooked on them for life. So a 10 key project is a contract under which the firm agrees to fully design, construct, and equip perhaps a manufacturing, business, or service facility in a host country. And this contractor who is coming into the host country agrees to handle every detail of the manufacturing and construction process. And then they agree to also train personnel to be able to man the facility and operate whatever machinery is contained within this facility. And once they have been able to finish that and the whole setup is ready to go, they would hand it over to the buyer in the host country for some form of remuneration or payment. And this payment means that you have essentially bought the facility and the technology and all the knowledge that they came to give from them. And this is usually done when we talk about technology-intensive industries and sectors like the chemical industry and the pharmaceutical and petroleum industries, where they deal with a lot of complex and expensive production technologies that we are not able to develop here fully on our own. And we realize that a lot of these 10 key projects have been undertaken in Ghana, especially by the Chinese, who come in and they teach us how to use a lot of these technologies and facilities, and then they train our personnel to use it. We give them some payment, and then they leave it over to us. But almost always, the projects do not continue to thrive the way they were when the original proponents of the technology were around teaching personnel how to use it. I don't know if anyone has any experience to share in that regard. I remember some time ago in the University of Ghana, the Chinese tried to bring us these interactive learning boards. And they were like whiteboards, only they were mini computers. And they brought us a few, about 4 or 5 of them. And they told us that they were, as part of a partnership, they were giving them to the University of Ghana, and they were going to train us on how to use them for teaching and learning. So they gave us about 4 or 5, they set it all up, helped us to set up the rooms where we'll be doing these learning sessions. They taught us how to use the boards. They brought us all the interactive dashboards and how to control it and the different kinds. So it doesn't even use the conventional markers that we used to write. It has all these special markers that are developed in China and all that. And they set it up and they taught us how to use it, and they left. And once they left, within about, it didn't even get up to a year, I think about 6 months, majority of us forgot how to use the technology because it was very complex. And then after some time, the dashboards started developing faults, and we were not able to get them fixed because the technology and everything, bear in mind, was in Chinese. So we couldn't even get a local engineer to take it apart and see how it works and all that. And eventually they became defunct, and no one really uses them in the university anymore. But the boards are still there, still set up. And that's a typical example of a 10 key project, right? Perhaps they were thinking that the University of Ghana will enjoy using the board so much that we will order for more, but ultimately that did not happen. Lucy, your hand went up first. Can you please speak?
With a 10 key products, you see them with people who do usually the engineering, procurement, and construction, big company. But usually it's not only the Chinese. You get a lot of export trade from other countries like Germany, Australia.
That's true.
It depends on the company that is taking in the project.
That's true.
Most of the big projects, you see a few Chinese, but this project, the training is done in a way that, most of the after sales service, you have to call them to come and do it because they are the manufacturers. Most of the time, they are the manufacturers of the product. So it takes a while for you to be able to get your people to understand. But they are manuals.
Exactly.
If someone install a computer, a machine for you, and does not leave a manual for operation, the person doesn't want to.
In our case, we had a manual, but it was in Chinese.
Yeah, that is it, because the government does not even encourage you buying products where the manuals are in the Chinese. It's not even part of it. I think it's against our law to have products with that do not have English written on them.
Yeah.
Lucy.
Hold on, let me finish. We get them coming in most of the time, but it's not supposed to be. They will definitely have an English manual.
Exactly.
We were working on a power plant. There are certain components where we need to do, or certain major things that we need to do. Then we bring the people from outside because maybe we want to do a redesign or another training. But with where I was working, my engineers were managed to be able to do almost all the things. There's a short servicing that we do that we usually bring people from outside. Now they can equally do it. But from the beginning, you need them, especially if you don't understand certain manufacturing aspect of a thing, then you call them to come. And when they come, they usually train before they leave.
Yeah, they
So
do.
make sure that the people understand what they are doing before they leave. So it's up to you to take very good notes and ask questions.
Yeah.
So, but the manuals are not supposed to be in a foreign language. That means you have to look for a Chinese to translate for you. But it's not supposed to be so. But we are still having people doing that. And I think that is where the laws are lapsed, and we need to work on it. And we are English country anyway.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Lucy. Godwin, were you saying something in relation to what Lucy said?
Yes, I was saying that, you see, sometimes even the manuals are in English, but they are so user unfriendly that it is completely useless when you find trouble.
Yeah, that's
it's like it's designed for you to go back to them. That is how sometimes the structure is like.
Yeah. Of course, they want you to do that. They want money. After sales service is part of their business. So for them, they make some money from the after sales also, because flying in the person in and out, you pay a lot of money because you have to arrange for a whole lot of things to get the person to come and fix the new equipment and train. So it is up to you, the person they are setting the thing for, to make sure that you get the necessary information from them before you leave.
Yeah, that's true. Vincent, you can come in.
Okay. I have a bit of experience with turnkey projects because of what I do, especially the mining and construction industry. There are lots of turnkey projects going on in Ghana. And it's mostly predominantly turnkey projects are pre-financed. And most of the time we don't have the money to be able to do that. If you realize there are lots of Chinese companies, big construction companies doing a lot of turnkey, i.e. Pokuasi Interchange and co. You know, the caveat of that is this. You know, you get their companies taking up projects, you know, and we don't get to benefit in any way, because you hardly get a Ghanaian company who will be able to, who have that sort of financial engineering mechanism to be able to raise large sums of, of funds to be able to do those kind of things. So what the Chinese do basically is that they bid for the projects, you know, from the top. Okay, so Ghana government goes to China and then looking for funding to do an interchange. Okay, so the Chinese government will tell them, okay, we are going to give you the funds. All right, but then our company, our building company or construction company will take up that project. So most of the time, I realize the money don't even get to Ghana.
That's true.
Okay, so the caveat about that is Ghana, the local companies are lost out, even though most of the time they do get mini jobs, subcontracting and co. But these Chinese come here and they come with everything. And it will surprise you to know that they come here with their
less known companies, foreign markets.
Yes. They come with their cooks and everything. There was a project we were looking for funding for a Ghanaian mining company. And then we're asked to bring a local bank guarantee. The project was about $50 million. Which bank in this country will do that? We're even looking to do a consortium of banks. And none of them wanted to do that. Most of them were risk averse. But in China, you got one bank, ICBC Bank, who did that. You know, and a Chinese company got that project. So turnkey projects are good, but unfortunately, it's to the detriment of most of our local construction companies. And then the project owners. Just want to emphasize on that.
That's true. Thank you very much, Christian. Salil, please come in.
Yeah, Doc. So in addition to what Christian has said, I mean, it's an issue of capital exposure and capital investment.
Yeah.
We do not have that financial muscle to be able to invest along a long period of time when it comes to such huge infrastructural projects.
Yeah.
So that becomes a necessity for us to go in for such projects.
Yeah.
And number two, we don't have the technical expertise to be able to deliver on some of these projects. So, I mean, if you look at the level of construction that's happening in China or in Europe or in America, it's not the same kind of construction that our local architects and engineers are exposed to.
Yeah.
So we don't have it. That's the reason why we go in for this. But the main point that I wanted to drum home as international business students is, with my experience with the Chinese, you have to be cautious if you're going to work with them. They have an entry-level strategy where they can considerably subsidize the cost of an infrastructural equipment, especially technological equipment.
Mm-hmm.
They can, at some point in time, they can even zero rate it.
Yeah.
But then, like what all these phone equipment manufacturers do, after a year, they push an update to your phone to slow your equipment down.
Yeah.
And that is what they do, especially for technological infrastructure. Then you would require their expertise, and that is where they make their money. So you should be very careful when the Chinese is offering you the same device that is supposed to cost, let's say, $1,000 at $100.
Yeah.
It is the same quality, but he is going to make his money from the softer side of the discussion.
That's true.
Doc, so from what Sal is saying,
Yeah.
the friend saying this. So doesn't the government know that these things are going on, and can't the national security services do anything about this? So we'll be cheated forever.
What are they going to do?
You need the infrastructure.
Oh,
No, but like you were saying that some of the equipment they can put in upgrades and stuff. These things are traceable. These things you can monitor.
Yeah, but
It's not rocket science.
The monitoring.
Yes, but if the national security is interested, that is, if they are, they can trace these things.
Godwin, the national security themselves, their equipment is made from China. So what are they going to use to trace?
No, but you see, like I'm saying, yes, I get you, Sal. But I'm saying that if you know your equipment are from China and you need to get the Chinese because they are illegal, then it will mean that I think that the commitment is just not there. That's the whole thing. But if you wanted to, there are other providers of equipment that you could actually go into to find out if you really are serious about what you're doing. But will they? That's the question.
Yeah, even if we are going to even go into this debate of what's happening in Europe and America with the banning of the equipment of Huawei, in building the 5G infrastructure in Europe and America.
Yeah.
In terms of R&D, I think it was one of the classes that we checked. Huawei is spending over $15 billion in R&D alone, just R&D.
From the UK as well.
Yes, they have a huge campus that has the replicas of all the top countries here. And when you go, they actually acculturate you so that you can fit into that country when you leave China. So they have a huge, it's not only about the what do you call the hardware side, on the software side, on the people side as well, they are putting in a lot to get their people to become acculturalized to whatever markets that they are going into. Yeah. It's a whole revolution in China. It's a model that
I understand you, but my point is that we can't sit there and just watch things just go on like that. Something can be done. Maybe we can't do it to the point we want, but at least something can be done, because it cannot forever go on that Africans or people who are seeking help from these people are forever going to be disadvantaged.
Ivan, do you think the government is not aware of it? Every government is aware of it, but our hands are tied because we are taking
Exactly. Thank you.
I will tell you that I will let you know that I met one Chinese guy who was on the construction. He was very educated. He was the one who was telling, they even bring as far as prisoners to come and do labor, and they pay them. So that money that is being paid to the prisoner goes to the government of China. So you see, when the Alu people, they came to do their research, there was a Chinese American lady that he will tell you, most of the monies are repatriated by the government, and most of these banks are supported by the government for them to, as like the Salu said, revolutionized, to enter, to take over the world. So even if you go to that bank to take money, it's the government that is supporting it. So they have a terms and conditions they give you. Because we have rules in this country as to what kind of level of, employment or you should give to foreigners and that you should give to Ghanaians.
Yeah.
But you realize that when the companies come from beginning to the end, even the middle level and lower level, you see there are people working there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
We have closed because our hands are tied. We have put.
No, it's because we are corrupt. That is it. Our hands are not tied. We are corrupt.
Ivan, hello. At times it's not about corruption. When we went in for the loan, there were conditions that we had to meet.
Yeah.
They will tell you, we are bringing a construction company. We are doing A, B, C, D. Yeah. And because of political expediency or political points, the government accept it because we, like the Pokwasi one, we want an interchange to say that this government did it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't look beyond that.
Yeah.
All that we want is the structure to be built.
Yeah.
So how it is built, we don't care. And then even the conditions under which we repay the money, when you go read about it, at times you weep.
Yeah.
But it's all because of political expediency. We want it done and say during that time we did it. It's not about time. Maybe the politicians don't get a dime from it, but they want it done so that they will say we did it. That's all.
When you realize that the quality of job they do in their country is not the same quality they do here. There's a vast of the quality of job at that high cost.
Yeah.
Compared to what their country cost.
They are pre-financing, you don't have money. Yeah. When they go to US government is paying them. Yeah. So they will go into better terms with them. You don't have the money, you go begging that I want to build the road. Please, I beg you, come and give me money. Yeah. Then we tell you, we go begging or Lucy. It's not like they come begging us. We go there to beg. So they'll give you their conditions.
Exactly. Hey, the comments are really hot too. The Chinese back the AU. Please, is it alleged? I think it's alleged.
Yes, it's true.
We don't have any evidence to that effect.
Sure.
But and they also built the AU headquarters.
Yeah, no, it's true. It became a big news. They supplied equipment and they backed us. So before
wow, I had no idea.
Before we take any decision, they have planned what they will respond to us before we even go there.
Interesting. Okay, Dela, you were asking the
Flagstaff House. Which country built it for us for free?
Yeah, that's another one.
Yes, we are in their hands.
The Indians built the Indians.
Yeah, but they can also bag it.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Because nothing is for free.
They can.
That's another one.
Indians,
exactly.
They have people there who are very poor. They could have used that money for them.
But they are very tech savvy.
So we think they are so generous. Nothing is for free, but you pay for it.
Oh, Asamoah, please, let me say this. International donations happen everywhere. Ghana donated to $1.5 million during Hurricane Katrina. Is it because we go for money from them, we cannot donate to them? Is that what you want to say in the case of India? It's for strategic reasons.
Yeah.
You didn't get me. I said they didn't give it to us for free.
Yeah.
They will not come and build your presidential palace for you for free.
I think from the
yes, it is true. That is how come they started selling Tata cars to our judges. This poor car, they were selling it. Tata Indica, Tata Safari. Let's see how Scorpions and Co. That was part of the deal.
I think from this our little discussion, we have come to see the full extent of the power of the political environment. and how it can manipulate and control actions, sometimes defying logic. But politically, it makes sense. And because of the positioning of the political environment and their influence over regulation in various markets, they are able to make some of these things happen, regardless of how we, the commoners, feel about it. So very interesting discussion. Thank you, everyone. We have one more under the export modes to consider, which is cooperative export. And I think this one is a popular one that we use in Ghana a lot, which I think Madam Asabia's, Dr. Asabia Sarah's office is in charge of. Now, cooperative export basically involves collaborative agreements with other firms concerning the performance of exporting functions. And they are also known as export marketing groups. So they are frequently found among SMEs, firms that do not really have the gravitas or the amount of resources that is required to be able to actively export to foreign markets. So they come together cooperatively to be able to achieve what they cannot achieve as individual firms attempting to market their products globally. And by doing this, they are able to achieve higher economies of scale. So by pulling together their resources and their strengths, they can be able to achieve a number of things, including conducting more better and effective research of foreign markets. They can also be able to get better representation in these foreign markets, depending on how they choose to sell their goods within the market. And it helps them to be able to realize more stable prices and reduce their selling costs. Because if they had decided to go at this independently as individual SMEs, the amount of cost that they would have incurred would have been relatively higher than if they go at it together, pulling together their resources and achieving economies of scale. So that is it for cooperative export. So at a glance, this diagram shows us the various kinds of export modes, ranging from the indirect export to direct export into cooperative export. And it tells us generally how the export proceeds from the home country or the third country where the manufacturer is located or where the manufacturing facility is located, to how different agents and intermediaries are used to get the product from the manufacturer in the home country to the buyer in the foreign market or the host country. So that is it for the export modes. Next, we move into the intermediary entry modes and strategies. And this is the next level on the continuum that we saw in the beginning of our session. Now, intermediate modes, also known as the contractual modes, exist because sometimes the firm may find that it is impossible for them, or they may not desire to be able to sell to buyers in foreign markets from their domestic location or from their third-party production facility in another country. So they would rather use intermediate entry modes where they will transfer the products or services to the foreign country by means of contractual agreements with other intermediaries. And they are primarily vehicles for the transfer of knowledge and skills between partners in order to be able to create foreign sales. So they'll usually enter into contractual agreements with other partners who possess resources and knowledge and experiences that they do not possess, to be able to help them move their products and services from their home country to this host or foreign country that they have identified. Now, intermediate modes are distinguished from hierarchical entry modes because with intermediate modes, there's no full ownership by the parent firm or the originating firm in the home country. The ownership and control is shared between the manufacturer or the producer in the home country and their local partner in the host country or foreign market in which they desire to sell their products or services. So that is one of the main differences between intermediate modes and hierarchical modes. Now, there are four main types of intermediate modes that we are going to talk about. The first one being licensing, the second one franchising, the third one contract manufacturing, and the fourth one joint venture. So let's take them one after the other. The first one being licensing. So licensing here is a contractual agreement between one company that is known as the licensor, the one who is giving out the license, who makes a legally protected asset available to another company or firm who is referred to as the licensee in exchange for royalties, license fees, or some other form of compensation, depending on how the contractual agreement is drawn up. Now, the licensed assets in this case could be anything from a brand name to the name of the company, to a patent that is owned by the licensor, or to a particular trade secret or product formulation, which they would grant the licensee access to for some royalties or license fees for a certain period of time. Now, licensing is widely used in sectors such as the entertainment and fashion and beauty sector, where we see companies like Lego and Disney and some of the designer brands that we know often striking license deals with clothing and fragrance and toy manufacturers to be able to generate additional revenue using their brand name, which they have spent years building, to be able to acquire a significant amount of equity among consumers globally, right? So these brands that they give license to are able to operate and sell products and services aside what they originally sell, using their brand name as part of their high-priced couture lines. So we have brands like Disney that deals specifically with producing the movies and also produce some of their merchandise and running their theme parks. And they do the rest by licensing the names of their characters and the names of the movies that they produce to other companies to use to produce different forms of clothing, fragrances, toys, among other things, for them to be able to generate other kinds of revenue aside the regular streams of revenue that they already have. Now, licensing can give a very attractive, can serve as a very attractive source of investment for the licensor throughout the period that they have allowed the licensee to use this particular asset of theirs to generate additional revenue. However, the licensor in this case must make sure that in the licensing agreements, they put in place the necessary clauses to protect themselves. Because once the agreement is signed, it is very difficult to be able to control what the licensee does with the particular asset that you have given them right to. You, the licensor, lose control. And in that case, the only control you have is per the terms of the agreement that you have signed with the licensee upon granting them access to that particular asset, be it a brand name or a product formulation or what have you. And throughout the period of the agreement, you cannot dictate what the licensee does with the rights that you have given them. And there are a number of these licensing agreements that we can see around us. Most of the popular ones that I have seen are in relation to toys, right? But the more recent ones that are coming out is in relation to makeup. Recently, I have seen Disney giving licenses to a lot of makeup companies, particularly Colourpop, and another makeup company. The name has escaped me a bit, but I'll let you know when I remember. And they have given them rights to some of their characters and the movies that they produce to create makeup around these things. So Colourpop recently came out with the Disney designer collection. They also have the Disney Mulan collection. And then they have the Disney Lion King collection, all of which are makeup collections built around these Disney movies that I talked about. So the Disney designer collection is based around these 6 Disney princesses, namely Ariel, Belle, Tiana, Pocahontas, Snow White, and then Cinderella. And then we have the Mulan collection built around the Mulan character. And then the Colourpop Lion King collection built around the Lion King movie. And you realize that all these makeup lines came out around the time where they were celebrating specific aspects of these movies. For instance, the Mulan makeup collection came out when the Mulan live action movie was supposed to be released. However, because of COVID, they were not able to do the premiere of the movie, but the makeup line was launched anyway. However, the Lion King line was able to be launched successfully in addition to the global premiere of the Lion King movie, which earned Disney a lot of money, as well as the company that licensed the Lion King name to use to create the makeup. So that is one example of how the licensing proceeds with regard to Disney and the manufacture of makeup. Then we also see Disney and other animators like Pixar and the ones who do the Power Rangers. I've forgotten their names. But they also give licenses to all these toy manufacturers like Hasbro and Mattel to be able to use the characters in these movies to manufacture toys and toy paraphernalia for children to play with. We also see that the owners of a lot of movie franchises, Disney now owns a number of the huge movie franchises like the Marvel franchise and the Star Wars franchise. And they give these licenses out to toy manufacturers like Hasbro to be able to build toys and create characters around these movies to be able to sell to entertainment aficionados. It will surprise you that a number of these toys are not even bought by children. There are grown-ups who actually collect these toys and pay top dollar to have some of these toys as part of their collections. So that's another way by which licensing can be done between a particular brand owner like Disney and then toy manufacturers. The Chinese don't buy licenses to do this. Yeah. Okay, Anne-Marie, you're saying Disney partnered with Mark as well. Or now we will say they gave them the license. Yes, they gave them the license. Now that you know the correct term. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Lucy, you were waiting to watch the Mulan. Oh, I'm sure they'll release it on Disney Plus. So if you can get the Disney Plus subscription, I'm sure you will be able to watch it there. But Bridget, good one. The Chinese don't get licenses. Lucy, you were saying something?
Thank you for that info.
You're welcome. Okay, then we can talk about the almighty Lego that has licenses for almost every single popular live action entertainment fun movie that people are so excited about. When I saw that they came out with a Lego set for Friends, I realized that Lego has gone beyond in fact, they are currently in my book, they're one of the best licensing companies because they have been able to get license for almost all the major entertainment franchises around and give people the opportunity to be able to experience playing with characters in these movies. Della, any particular reason for, please, your question is not clear. Can you please clarify?
Yeah, I wanted to know if there is any particular reason for the Chinese not to engage in licensing.
No, she was saying that as a joke.
Oh, okay, okay.
The thing is,
okay.
The Chinese are mostly engaged to produce these things because of the low labor cost in their country. The downside of using these people and giving them your technology to manufacture in your name is that they learn your technology. They learn your designs. They get your templates. So once they have manufactured what they can manufacture for you, they'll start manufacturing their own without your permission because now they have all your templates.
Oh, okay.
Do you get it? It's not necessarily legal.
Okay.
All right. So, Della, are you okay now?
Oh, yes. I thought it was a serious comment she made. I didn't know it was.
She put a googly face at the end.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so like I was saying, Lego has done well Lego was virtually dying as a brand. And they came up with the smart initiative of using the popularity and of all these entertainment brands, including movies and series and toys and animations, to rebuild their brand by leveraging the brand equity that these brands have. And they started with the Star Wars franchise. And they started developing Lego sets based on the Star Wars characters and the Star Trek characters. They developed the Lego Death Star. They developed the Lego sets that mimicked the wars that were fought in Star Wars with all the miniature characters, and it started giving them popularity. And once they did that, the Lego brand was revived because, like I said, a lot of these toy companies do not necessarily have children as their main customers. They target a lot of adults who actually play with these toys. I've met whole adults who have full collections of Lego sets based on their favorite movies. like Star Wars and the Marvel franchise, not in Ghana here per se, but I'm sure there are a few of them in Ghana as well who collect these things, right? And recently on the anniversary.
Yeah, and look.
Yes, Godwin, please go ahead.
Children don't buy toys. It's the parents and the adults who buy for them.
Exactly. You see, so by doing that, they are able to catch the adult's attention and ultimately get to the kids as well. Because to have a Friends television series set, there's no child, perhaps of a particular age who has now grown up, maybe who used to watch Friends, may be able to relate to this. But this is more targeted towards adults, right? So you are able to, they are able to leverage the assets of these companies, specifically their brand equity, to be able to build their own brands. And Lego has several of these that they put up for sale. They have Lego Avengers, Lego Star Wars, Lego Batman, Lego Superman, you name it, they have it all. Chris, since you're saying they have Chinese versions of almost every product. Example, Huawei MateBook laptops. I won't be surprised because they have the templates, so they can be able to recreate and mimic a lot of the products of these popular manufacturers. Thank you for that, business. Ali, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, you see, Huawei used to copy.
Yeah.
If you critically assess their kind of arrangement that they had with a lot of technology companies, they will be working through your corridors and they would copy.
Yeah.
But after some time, they've stopped copying.
Yeah.
If you look at the phones that they are manufacturing, everybody thought that when the US banned them from the use of Android OS, their Huawei phones were going to crash.
Yeah.
But within a few weeks, they had announced that they had developed their own operating system for Huawei, which they are using.
Yeah.
So yes, they copied and they are still doing on some of the things, but the level at which they are manufacturing now goes beyond copy. If you look at what's happening in technology, they are 10 years ahead of what's happening in Europe and America.
Yeah.
5G that people are making noise with in Europe, they started testing 5G a couple of years back.
Yeah.
So they are far gone.
That's true. And I think it's one of the main benefits of internationalization, of gradual internationalization or incremental internationalization. They've managed to gain a lot of experience working for others and in foreign markets. So I think on the basis of what Saliu has just said, the learning and experience and the knowledge gained over the years is partly what is contributing to their growth and advancement now. Or Saliu, you don't agree?
Completely.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Saliu.
Welcome.
Okay, so after licensing, we can talk of franchising, which is a variation of licensing. And it's a strategy where a parent company known as the franchisor or the franchisor allows a franchisee to operate a business developed by him, the franchisor or the franchisor, in return for a fee and adherence to franchise-wide policies and practices. So it is a marketing-oriented method of selling a business service. Unlike licensing, where you're just selling something like a brand name or a patent or a particular formulation, with franchising, you are selling the entire business service and how it is set up and how it is run, including the name and the patent and the product formulation and everything. Often to small independent investors who have capital to be able to start a business, but they do not have the requisite experience to be able to start the business from scratch. So they'll bring their capital and they use the entire business model and operations of a particular company that is already established. And that is what is called a franchise. And we have a number of them in Ghana here, including Burger King and KFC. Now, there are two major types of franchising. The first one is product or trade name franchising, where the arrangement between the franchisee and the franchisor is to distribute or sell the manufacturer's products within a specified territory or location, using the manufacturer's trademark their trade name or product line in exchange for fees. So recently, Coca-Cola Bottling Company Ghana bought the franchise for Schweppes products from DNC Company Limited. They went into a franchising agreement with the company to manufacture and sell Schweppes beverages in Ghana. Right? So when you see Schweppes in Ghana, it is not DNC Company that is manufacturing and selling directly. It's Coca-Cola. Okay, so Chris, you say Holiday Inn Accra Airport is an example of a franchise. Good. That's another good one. That one is not a product or trade name franchise. That one is a business format package franchise, which is the type of franchise where the franchisor transfers under contract the entire business package that it has developed and owns to the host country entity. So I don't know anyone else who has been to a Holiday Inn outside Ghana, but when you enter a Holiday Inn outside Ghana and then the one in Ghana, you realize that they are very, very, very similar, right? So the package transferred contains elements necessary to establish a business and run it profitably, including the trademark names, the copyrights, the designs, the patents, the trade secrets and know-how. Everything is given together to the franchisee. And this is also given at a fee, just like the licensing. However, there are certain differences that help us to distinguish a franchise from a licensing agreement, and we will go into that very soon. But since you are right, Holiday Inn Accra Airport is a typical example of a business format package franchise. Lucy, please come in.
So can I ask a question? You know, these car dealership companies, some of them, are they franchise or they are just licensed dealers? Those who sell the
franchise. Some are licensed dealers, some are distributors.
Okay. Right. When I was working with Mechanical Lloyd, the BMW would like the building and everything to look like this.
Yeah.
Everything they want it to look like this. So I was wondering whether it was just a licensing they gave or it was just a franchise, or I'm a bit.
I think it becomes clearer when you go into the terms of the agreement. So was Mechanical Lloyd paying BMW some kind of commission or license?
They pay.
They pay. Okay, then we can call that a licensing agreement. But the thing is, they are not manufacturing the cars, are they? No. The cars are brought in from there.
Yes.
So we can't call that a licensing agreement per se. You see?
Okay.
Isn't that a dealership?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, whether it's a dealership or a license. That's what I want to.
So we need to look into the specifics of the agreement. Who is paying who? Is it a commission, or are they agents or are they distributors? Because if they are distributors, that means they take ownership of the products and they sell it, right? But if they are agents, they don't take ownership. You see, so we need to look into all the specifics of the agreement to be able to clearly say where they belong.
Sure. I don't have that specific, so I'll find out one of these days.
Okay. Yes, please. Thank you so much, Lucy. Okay, Michael says AH Hotels is also an example of a franchise. Okay. Okay, I haven't been to AH Hotels before, but perhaps based on the explanation that we gave, I think you have determined that AH Hotels is one. So thank you, Michael, for that contribution. So let's look at some of the differences between licensing and franchising. Now, in licensing, the fee that is usually paid to the licensor is referred to as royalties. But in franchising, the fee that is paid to the franchisor is known as management fees, right? And then in licensing, they deal with products, sometimes just a single product being the common element between the licensor and the licensee in their agreement. However, when it comes to franchising, it covers the total business, which is transferred from the franchisor to the franchisee. And this may include the know-how, the intellectual rights, the goodwill, trademarks, and business contacts, among others. And franchising is all-encompassing, whereas licensing just concerns one aspect of the business, like say a product. So it was very interesting to me when I realized that the KFC chicken that is fried at the KFC in my area, they don't do anything there, they don't season it or anything there. It is brought to them frozen every morning. and they fry and sell. So they don't know how the seasoning is done or what goes into the seasoning and the coating of the chicken. They just get it frozen, they put it in the hot oil, they bring it out, and they serve. So that is one of the differences between licensing and franchising. Also, we can talk about the fact that licenses are usually taken by well-established businesses. The business person who takes up the license is already established in what they do. Like we realize Lego is already established in developing all these miniature play materials and Lego bricks. Hasbro is already established in the manufacture of toys for different companies. So when they take up a license from, say, the Marvel series, or say from Disney, or say from Saban. Yes, Saban is the owner of the Power Rangers brand or trademark. Or say from Saban, they are taking it because they just need the name to be able to attach to toys that they manufacture in the likeness of the characters in these particular movies or animations that the companies have produced. However, franchises tend to be more of a startup situation. They are not established in what they do already. They have capital and they are looking for something to invest it in. So they will invest it in the franchise as a form of a startup to be able to establish a business from the ground up. Now, licensing usually has terms ranging from 16 to 20 years, right? But franchising agreements are usually 5 years long, sometimes extending to up to 11 years. So a licensing agreement based on this could go longer than a franchising agreement, right? And franchises, because of the 5 to 11 year limit, are renewable, right? Unlike a license. Sometimes, perhaps because the license has to do with specific assets relating to technical know-how, copyright, and trademarks. If you continue licensing a particular trademark to a licensee and they learn all there is to know about it and they become very well known for it, they directly become your competitor. Hence, limiting the option of renewing a license for a particular brand over and over. However, franchises can be easily renewed. Also, licensees tend to be self-selecting, right? Because they are already established businesses and they can demonstrate their strong position in their sector, they can pass their license on to an associate or sometimes an unconnected company with little or no reference back to the original licensor. Because at the end of the day, they have obtained the license from you via agreement. And like I mentioned earlier, once the agreement is signed, it becomes very difficult for the licensor to control what the licensee does with the license that you have given them. However, for the franchisee, it is definitely selected. Once the franchise is given to you, you do not have the power to sell it to another. The franchisor is the one who can decide to take the franchise from you and give to someone else because of the nature of the franchising agreement and the kind of transfer that takes place. And with licensing, usually, like we said, it concerns specific existing products, right? With little benefit from ongoing research being passed on by the licensor to the licensee. So there is no way that the licensor can be at a disadvantage when the licensee decides that they want to take the license that they have been given in a different direction, because they are not consistently investing in improving upon it. It's something they already have that the licensee wants to benefit from. However, the franchisor is using somewhat of a business package that is benefiting from continuous ongoing research and development. So if the McDonald's global brand sees some improvements or sees some changes, it will automatically affect every other McDonald's franchise in the world. So in that case, the franchisor has to pass on whatever changes take place in the mother brand to all the other franchises for it to be uniform. And that way, the franchisee will benefit from any form of ongoing R&D that is taking place to improve the overall franchise for others in the world. Do Shell and Total fall under any? I was under the impression that Total was a franchise. Please, does anyone here work for any of those to clarify for us? I was under the impression that Total was a franchise. Because a lot of these people who operate filling stations just go and buy the franchise. They just get a location, and the people come and set up everything for them, and they start selling the fuel. Lucy, can you clarify for us?
Okay, I know most of them, they are here themselves, but the filling stations, yes, they franchise for them, and but they control you. They make sure that everything is, yes.
Exactly.
They have their own Total and Shell stations too. That is
so that was what was confusing me, because I know people who own franchise versions of it, but then I also know people who work for the mother company here.
Yes, and they own their own. They also have filling stations they own themselves,
which they run themselves.
They have their own managers. It's just a few people, because to work with them, you need to be able to go through a lot of rules and regulations. They can easily take it from you.
Yeah.
Because there's a shell on where I was working around that side. I don't know what happened. They took it from them before you realize they've changed it to Total. So it depends on how you manage your place, and then they have very strict rules. So when you flaunt it, they'll take the franchise from you.
Yeah.
And they have rules of how you should fill your tank, how many tanks you should sell at a certain time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We were their clients, so I was asking a lot of questions because I was also confused.
Yeah.
So
just like me.
Their own stations, they have their own managers who are managing it, and they have the ones that people are managing it for. The people have come to take the name, franchise name, and then they are managing it.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you for the clarification, Lucy. That helps.
Doc, I was going to ask, I know this for Total, because there's one in Newtown. I'm friends with the owner.
Okay.
But in recent years, they embarked on sort of a standardization project where they were remodeling the look and feel of all the Total shops to look the same.
Yeah.
Initially, it didn't used to be that. It was Shell that had that level of standardization, but they did all of that. I'm not too clear where that investment came from, whether it's from the owner's pocket or it's from, Total themselves. That is what I'm unable to ascertain now.
I think it all falls within the franchise, the confines of the franchising agreement. If there's a clause in the agreement that says that if a change happens at the global level, all the franchise owners have to invest to implement that change, then it will come from the pocket of the franchisees. But if the clause says that any change that takes place at the global level by the owners of the franchise, they will independently implement among all the franchisees, then that will also proceed in that manner. So I think it boils down to the agreements that they sign and the terms of that agreement.
You can realize that they don't have many people, though, a lot of people, individuals who are owning the stations. Sometimes they take over certain stations because you cannot afford.
Yeah.
And then they pay off so that they can take over it. So it depends on. But you realize that it's just a few very serious-minded people who are with this kind of stations that are working.
Yeah.
That's why we are seeing the influx of people opening their own filling stations with their own names, small.
Yeah.
But they cannot follow their standard.
Yeah. Which brings us down to the final difference between licensing and franchises. Based on our discussion, we can see that what we just talked about is representative of the final difference, being that there's a standard fee structure and any variation within an individual franchise system would cause confusion and mayhem. So this brings us back to the standardization that Sally was talking about. They realized that they had to do more to bring about some level of standardization in the Total franchise. Unlike with licensing, where the people who take up the license, which is the licensees, are already established. So they can use their established position in the marketplace and their trade muscle to negotiate for better terms and to determine substantial portions of their agreement to favor what they want to do, and not necessarily always go in line with what the franchisor or the licensor wants them to do. So that is it for the differences between licensing and franchising. Next, we can talk about contract manufacturing. And this is where the firm enters the foreign markets by contracting firms in the host country to produce all or some of a portion of their products. And this enables the firm to have foreign sourcing without making a final commitment. Because perhaps if they have to set up their own manufacturing facility in the host country, it may cost them money. So they would rather have a contractual agreement with a manufacturing plant in that home country to manufacture their products for them, where they will control the R&D and the marketing and the distribution and sales and servicing and everything in the foreign market. But they will hand over the responsibility for producing the material to a local firm, whereas they control all other aspects of the process within the value chain. So a typical example of this is IKEA, where IKEA is a furniture company, right? A DIY furniture manufacturing company. And they are located in several countries all over the world. But the nature of their product is such that it will require significant investment to be able to set up a furniture manufacturing company or plant in every foreign location that they are in. So they smartly use a contractual network of small overseas manufacturers. So for instance, if IKEA were to set up a company in Ghana to sell, they would use the local carpenters and employ the local carpenters to manufacture their designs, which they will package and sell in Ghana, rather than manufacturing from Sweden and bringing it here or setting up a whole manufacturing plant here to manufacture their own furniture. They rather contract the small manufacturers, the small carpenters who are working in Ghana here, to manufacture the furniture to their specifications, which they will sell in their store. And that is the model that IKEA is using in all parts of the world, including countries like China, right? You can also talk about Foxconn China for Apple products, where Apple used Foxconn China to manufacture all the parts of their iPhone, right? And with that, Apple was able to manufacture the parts to produce their phones at a very cheap price, right? And use that to be able to gain access to the Chinese market, even though still Apple does not have a substantial chunk of the Chinese market. However, they use that subsidiary as well in that agreement with Foxconn China to be able to also get raw materials for their devices to send to other countries in the world to sell their iPhones. You can also see contract manufacturing taking place a lot among pharmaceutical companies. We have pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline among some of the other big pharmaceutical companies, using contract manufacturing facilities in countries like India to manufacture a lot of their medicines and drugs for sale in India, as well as for exports and sale in other countries in other parts of the world. So that is it for contract manufacturing. And then next we can talk about joint venture. And here joint venture is a partnership between two or more parties based in different countries. And there are three main collaboration possibilities when it comes to joint ventures between partners along the value chain. I think this comes back to when we're talking about those who handle the distribution, the logistics companies. So upstream-based collaboration is where the agreement between A and B is to just collaborate on R&D and production. So beyond production, everyone is free to handle their own downstream activities of marketing and distribution and sales. They only collaborate in terms of the R&D and the production of the items.
Doc, can I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
See the influx of this, those who sell the canned food, the mackerels, and then the salad. They go and make them in Chinese. Are they also part of the contract manufacturers? Or?
No, we can't call that contract manufacturing.
Okay.
Yes, it's export. It's still export.
But they make it under their brand names, you know.
Yes, and they make it in a third country and then they export.
Like delay mackerel, they go and do it from there. Then she comes and it's under her brand name.
Good. So it's export.
They are export.
It's export mode, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So that is it for upstream-based collaboration. And then downstream collaboration is where the two partners collaborate on downstream activities like marketing, distribution, sales, or service. So in terms of the downstream, that is more along the lines of the logistics of getting the finished product from the upstream to the final consumer through marketing, distribution, sales, and or service, right? And then we can talk about collaborations of both upstream and downstream activities where the firms collaborate on everything from sourcing of raw materials to R&D to production, all the way to marketing, distribution, sales, and service, right? So here they use their complementary competencies to help each other along the entire value chain. So one partner may have competencies in upstream, the other partner may have competencies in downstream, and they'll come together and then use all these competencies to facilitate the entire process from the upstream all the way to the downstream, where they get the finished product to the final consumer, right? So these are the three forms of collaboration that can take place when it comes to joint ventures. Now, there are two main types of joint venture. The first one is a contractual non-equity joint venture. Now, with a contractual non-equity joint venture, when the two partners, A and B, come together to collaborate, there is no joint enterprise with a separate personality that is formed. Each of the partners maintain their individual personalities. However, they come into agreement to share the cost of perhaps investment, as well as the risk involved in engaging in whatever they are doing, be it upstream or downstream collaboration, be it R&D and production or marketing and sales. And then to also agree to share the profits that will come about as a result of this collaboration. And there are typical examples of these that are taking place all over the world. A typical example is Germany's BMW and Japan's Toyota deciding to come together to cooperate on research into hydrogen fuel cells, as well as ultra lightweight car manufacturing materials, and then lithium air batteries to replace the lithium ion batteries that we have. And to the best of my knowledge, I think they've been able to perfect the lithium air battery, and they are collaborating now on building the sports car. Now, this joint venture came about as a result of Toyota having competencies with regard to the environmentally friendly hybrid cars and then the fuel cell development, which facilitated the agreement between the two to be able to work on the hydrogen fuel cell systems as well as the lithium air batteries. And then BMW also has a strength and a long track record in developing machines for the road. And they also have expertise in developing excellent sports cars. So this kind of contractual joint venture favored both of them based on the competencies that they had in different aspects of the value chain to be able to come together and use their complementary efforts to come up with something new that will benefit them both. However, this agreement did not result in the formation of a new company. Each company maintained their individual identities. However, they agreed to certain terms and they decided to partner on certain things, sharing the investment costs, the risks, as well as the profits that will come about as a result of the agreement. Now, the next type of joint venture we can talk about is an equity joint venture, which I have not heard of one taking place in recent times. I don't know if anyone knows of any, but equity joint ventures basically involve the creation of a new company in which foreign investors and local investors come together, create the new company, and share ownership and control of the company. And a typical example from way back that I know, which was very successful, was Subsidiaries. And this started in 2001 when the Swedish telecom corporation known as Ericsson decided to partner with Sony from Japan to develop cellular devices. And that is how they came up with Sony Ericsson. They created a lot of good cellular devices for many years. But ultimately, Sony decided to buy out Swedish Telecom and fully own the brand. So they bought out Swedish Telecom, and I think eventually they changed the name. But that is a typical example of an equity joint venture where two companies come together, form a new company, and they share ownership and control of the new company that is created. So that is it for joint ventures. So we realized that when it comes to joint ventures, collaboration can be done in any way, manner, or form along the value chain, be it using upstream and downstream activities, or a combination of downstream competencies, or a combination of upstream competencies. It depends on the resources that each of the partners has, their level of competence, and how the competencies of both partners can complement each other to be able to facilitate the entry into a foreign market or a global market. And that brings us to the end of the intermediate modes. Please, does anyone have anything they want to say, a question they want to ask, a suggestion they want to make, or comment before we proceed on the intermediate modes? There's a difference between a joint venture and a merger. Joint ventures are more contractual and they involve agreements and partnerships. A merger is more of a takeover and a direct investment, which the home company undertakes alone, right? In the case of intermediate, it is a partnership or agreement between two partners. However, when it comes to mergers, which is an aspect of hierarchical entry modes, it involves direct investment by the domestic company into the host country. So we'll get into it very soon, Michael. Google and NASA developing Earth. Yes, that's an example of a non-equity joint venture. You're welcome, Michael. Okay, so into the hierarchical entry modes. Okay, Christian says in China, joint venture between MAN Diesel and a Chinese company, which resulted in production of Shackman trucks. They both own 50-50 shares. That's another good example, right? So thank you for that, Christian. All right, so moving on to the hierarchical entry modes and strategies. Here, the firm completely owns and controls the foreign entry mode. So that's the difference between joint venture and merger. Joint venture is a partnership. Two people own it, two partners. But with merger, it's one person who completely owns. Yes, a joint venture is a form of alliance. So another name for non-equity joint ventures are strategic alliances. So Bridget, you're right. A joint venture is a form of alliance. Okay, thank you for the clarification, Lucy. I got you the first time though, but it's Google Earth. You're right. Okay, so continuing with the hierarchical modes. Here, the firm completely owns and controls the foreign entry mode. So it's mainly a question of where the control in the firm lies. Whether the control lies with the head office in the home country or the control lies with the subsidiary in the host country. Now, the degree of control that head office can exert on the subsidiary will depend on how many and which value chain functions can be transferred to the home market. So if you have a subsidiary that is fully efficient and fully internalized, such that in the host country, the subsidiary handles everything from upstream to downstream activities along the value chain, the level of control that the home country head office has over the subsidiary will be limited, as compared to a subsidiary that perhaps is only handling downstream activities and still relies on the home country for the upstream portion activities in the value chain. So the level of control here is dependent largely on the kind of functions that are handled within each, between the two companies, be it the head office or the subsidiary that is set up in the host country. Now, this again depends on the allocation of responsibility and competence between the head office and the subsidiary. Like we mentioned earlier, depending on how many functions are handled at a subsidiary from upstream to downstream, they may have a higher level of responsibility and a higher level of competence, which will make them less reliant on the head office and vice versa. So looking at the allocation of responsibility and competence, as well as how the firm wants to develop this on an international level, the head office can decide to create a subsidiary that is fully internalized and does not need to rely on head office for anything, or can create a subsidiary that is somewhat internalized and needs to rely on the head office for the rest of the value chain activities to be able to fully function. So there are two main types of hierarchical modes of entry. One is mergers and acquisitions, and the other one is greenfield investments. And we'll start with mergers and acquisitions. Now, with mergers and acquisitions, a domestic company selects a foreign company and acquires its ownership and control. Now, this provides immediate access to international manufacturing facilities and a marketing network, because the domestic firm is acquiring a firm in the host country that is already established, that is functioning as a full entity with all the elements of the upstream and downstream activities taking place. So once they acquire it, they inherit the entire network of activities, and then they proceed with it as it has been established to already serve the host country. Now, mergers and acquisitions can be split into two, one being mergers, two being acquisitions. Now, when it comes to mergers, mergers involve the combining of two or more companies, generally by offering the stockholders of one company securities in the acquiring company in exchange for the surrender of their stock. So if we in the home country are buying a company in the host country, we will buy their company, and in exchange for them allowing us to buy their company, we give them shares in our company so that they become part owners in our company. A typical example is when Bharti Airtel merged with Millicom Tigo to become Airtel Tigo. The terms of that contract, that merger contract is still under wraps, but there was some exchange of stock and some agreements for them to come together as one, and then stocks to be exchanged for them to be able to survive in the Ghanaian market. So that is a typical example of a merger that has taken place recently that we can make reference to. Whereas acquisitions are where one company simply just takes over another company and clearly establishes itself as the new owner, right? And this kind of purchase is called an acquisition. So we saw it happen with EcoBank and the Trust Bank. EcoBank took over the Trust Bank and they did not keep anything of the Trust Bank. They established themselves as the new owners and renamed every Trust Bank branch as EcoBank, right? Another example is when ABSA took over Barclays. ABSA took over Barclays and rebranded the whole of Barclays to become ABSA because they are the new owners. MTN took over Space Phone and rebranded everything to become MTN. Bharti Airtel, when they initially entered Ghana, took over Zain. I don't know who remembers the Zain telephone. Who had the Zain number? Did anyone here have a Zain number?
Yes, Doc.
We did.
Lucy has one, 0266.
Bharti Airtel took over Zain. And they established themselves as the new owners. They really named themselves Airtel Ghana, right? But as time went on, they realized that they needed additional support. So they merged with Tigo to become Airtel Tigo, right? Michael says FNB Bank taking over GHL Bank. Was it a merger or an acquisition, Michael?
I know it's a merger, but they didn't take the name of GHL Bank. It's now a First National Bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can call it an acquisition. Oh. What do you think?
It was an acquisition.
No, maybe Akosia Inkum and Co can clarify if they are here.
But if they didn't keep the name or anything, I think it was an acquisition.
Mantibia works there.
Yes.
Hello, Doc.
Well, they're saying it's a merger, so
I think it's still a merger, though. It's still
Okay.
a merger because my bank also merged with Energy Bank. First Atlantic merged with Energy Bank.
Okay.
And we maintain the brand of First Atlantic Bank.
Okay.
However, it's still a merger.
So it was an agreement.
It was an agreement, so it's part of the
Okay, so part of the terms. Okay.
It's part of the terms, yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you for the clarification.
That's a question, Victor. Why would they take the First Atlantic Bank? Is it that the First Atlantic Bank?
So I think what will make them accept easily is the percentage. So First Atlantic came with 88% of the capital.
Exactly.
And Energy came with only 12. So and I think First Atlantic had a stronger brand.
That makes sense.
Than Energy. So it wasn't a difficult.
It was a no-brainer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Almost a takeover.
Yes. So some will see it as an acquisition, but on the agreement it's a merger.
Yeah. And a lot of this information is not made public. They keep a lot of it under wraps. So we are even lucky for the insiders to be telling us. So we are grateful.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, Chief, please go ahead.
Can a company acquire another company and still use the...
Chief, we are losing you.
Hello, is it okay now?
Yeah, we are still losing you.
Yeah, go and sit on it.
Salute, your machine is not good. Hello?
Go and sit on the third.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello,
Chief.
Doc.
Yes.
Hello, Doc.
Yes.
Okay, I'll type my question. Okay, please. Can a company buy another company?
Yay. Chief, we are struggling.
Thank you, Chief Kano. We see you next time. Bye-bye.
Chief, you can type it out. We'll be very grateful. Okay, so aside mergers and acquisitions, we can also talk about the greenfield strategy, where the firm does not go ahead to buy any company in the host country or merge with anybody. They just go outright and start from the ground up. They expand their operations in the foreign market by purchasing their own local property, hiring local manpower, and setting up everything from scratch. And here, they do not run the risk of losing any of their technical competence because they are doing everything by themselves without buying an already existing company that they have to transfer their expertise to their local operatives to be able to implement. They are starting everything from scratch. And it enables them to keep a tight control on the operations because they are the ones who are starting it and building it from the ground up. A typical example is the Mercedes-Benz production facility in Pune, India. They set up their own facility from ground up, put in place all the machinery, and started producing their cars. There's a similar facility too in Uttar Pradesh, India, that is run by Samsung Manufacturing, where they also have their own factory built from ground up, employing Indians and manufacturing their phones and selling them to the Indian market. Recently, we have VW in Ghana doing their own thing with their factory in the North Industrial area, manufacturing their cars, cutting out all export duties and giving us international grade cars for a fraction of the cost. And yesterday, someone was telling me that with the same money he would have bought a Picanto, he can now buy a VW Polo. And he believes that the VW Polo is of a better value. So already, car sellers in Ghana are in trouble. So that's a typical example of greenfield strategy. Does anyone have anything they want to say in that regard before we proceed?
Please, I have a question.
Yes, Ellen, go ahead.
Is it possible to have a combination of some of these modes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on how you work out the agreement.
Because I'm just looking at my company. Yeah. So globally, the head office is in Vevey, right? Mm-hmm. And under the head office, we have various zones across the world. The world has been grouped into zones. Yeah. Now, under the zones, for example, the zone we fall under is America, Oceania, and Africa. Yes. So under the zone, we also have regional companies. Yes. So, for example, we have Central and West Africa regional office. Mm-hmm. Then under that, we have Nestle Ghana, Nigeria, both Central and West African countries coming under us. Exactly. So going down the line, everybody has some sort of control over their activities. Exactly. Because the various countries which we term markets all have market heads. Yeah. We also have the regional heads and then the zonal heads. Yeah. And then for each department too, there is that hierarchy. Yeah. So if it's HR, if it's finance, even in the marketing activities. So although the individual markets have their own strategies, they have their targets at the end of the day. Yeah. They also have to get more or less some sort of approvals with some key projects, as well as reporting key activities to those on top of the ladder. So like Nestle Ghana would report to us in the CWA head office, and then we will report to the zone. Yeah. At the same time, all of us pay royalties for using the Nestle logo. Exactly. And all branded things that are like solely owned by the Vevey office, we are kind of paying for the rights to use them. So sometimes, I remember when I went at first, I used to ask, is the same company being set up? So why are we paying for those rights? Because it's the same company. Yeah. But I find that it's a combination of both licensing and hierarchical modes.
So I'm glad you have noticed it. And that is where you all come in as MSc IB students. This is what makes I always say that marketers and finance people and all these people, at the core of what we do, we are strategists. It's about knowing the different techniques and the tools that are at our disposal and using the knowledge and the experiences that we have gained to combine these tools and techniques into strategies that will help us to succeed in given markets. Because at the end of the day, it's about making maximum returns. So if it is about, like you are saying, a combination of hierarchical modes, intermediate modes, and export modes is what is going to get us our profit, we will do that. So I'm glad you have brought this up, Ellen. A combination of these strategies can be used in any way, manner, or form, depending on the knowledge that whoever is strategizing for the company has and how they have been able to a large extent determine the impact of whatever strategy they are putting together on their success in the markets that they're trying to enter into. Because we cannot use a one-size-fits-all approach for global marketing. You need to use what works as and when, and which we will learn very soon in terms of the different rules when it comes to selecting entry modes. We have the naive rule, we have the pragmatic rule, and the strategic rule, which we will describe very soon. So yes, Ellen, a combination of these tools and techniques can be used at any point in time, provided it works and gives us the returns on our investments that we are looking for. So thank you for that, Ellen.
Okay, thank you too.
Chief Tano says, can a company acquire another company and decide not to change the name of the newly acquired? Example, Tata buying Jaguar. Yes, depending on the terms of the agreement. And like Crescent rightly mentioned, I think, and Victor also mentioned, when you are dealing with an acquisition that you have made and the name that you have acquired has some level of brand equity, which you can easily leverage, it sometimes makes sense as a marketer to keep that name and leverage the equity of that name. And it seems Jaguar had some level of brand equity in the market with regards to the luxury cars. So, and Tata cannot compare to Jaguar in terms of brand equity in the luxury car market. So it made sense to keep Jaguar and not change the name from Tata to from Jaguar to Tata. So I hope that makes sense to you. Bridget says, can we say Glow adopted greenfield strategy? Yes, they came here, they started everything from scratch, they employed local people, and they carried them all the way to Nigeria, went to train them and brought them back. So I think they used the greenfield strategy, Bridget. Yes, Mr. Samantha, no, Jaguar, Land Rover actually, and they made it better. Yes, they made it better, but they kept the name. You see, so they built up the brand equity. I don't think they would have been that successful in making the brands better if they had changed the names from Jaguar and Land Rover to Tata. It would have set them back so many years because they would have had to re-establish brand equity to convince people that the new name Tata that they have given to the Jaguar and the Land Rover can be compared to the previous quality of Jaguar and Land Rover cars. So it was good that they kept the names Jaguar and Land Rover and made it better. They just built upon the brand equity that the Jaguar and Land Rover names already had. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the 3 entry modes, being hierarchical, intermediate, and export modes. So like I said, in selecting which mode to use to enter which market, there are 3 main rules that firms usually follow. The first one is the naive rule. And with the naive rule, the firm being the decision maker uses the same entry mode for all foreign markets, ignoring the heterogeneity of the individual foreign markets. And like I said, this is suicide. This is career suicide. Because whatever the firm is doing, the first point of call, especially when it comes to global marketing, is the heterogeneity of global markets and consumers across the globe, flowing directly from the globalization framework that we talked about. So to ignore the heterogeneous nature of the global market is suicide on behalf of the firm. They have already set themselves up to fail even before they have started. So the naive rule I will not recommend to any firm because you can never use a one-size-fits-all approach to enter every single foreign market based solely off of what we know about the differences, even in geographic location. So that is for the naive rule, which firms largely do not even apply anymore. The next, we have the pragmatic rule, which a number of firms are using. And yes, Michael, please come in.
Yes, Madam, about the naive rule. You recall we watched a video about Apple in India.
Yes.
Yes, so even though everything was against them in terms of how they were operating there, they still insisted on that because of some standards that they intend to, maintain. So would you call something like that a naive rule, knowing very well that?
Pragmatic, because you remember that at some, they said that initially that's how they started. But then at some point they realized that they had to start making some changes. So you see, they set up a facility in India, right? To help develop technology specifically for India. You remember that part?
Yes, I remember.
So they started with a naive rule, but they realized that it would not work.
Okay.
They started going a bit more pragmatic, using a more workable mode to fit the Indian market. Please, I hope you're okay.
Yes, I'm okay then.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Michael. Lucy, we will say steers used the naive rule to enter Ghana. Yes, they did. And they failed woefully. So that brings us, yes, Lucy, please go ahead.
Apple have invested huge amount into the India market now because of the Huawei, Huawei issue with America and UK. So they are trying to make more inroads into India. So I think they will adjust.
Yeah.
So I think they're pragmatic.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Lucy, for adding that. So with a pragmatic rule like we've established, the decision maker uses a workable entry mode for each foreign market, typically starting from a low risk one and then gradually increasing the level of risk and commitment. Now, only if the particular initial mode is not feasible or profitable will the firm look for another workable entry mode. So with a pragmatic rule, the firm starts with something. If it is working, they continue with it. But in the event that things start to go downhill, they will immediately start making changes and adapting based on what they are experiencing to be able to ensure that they can stay competitive and stay relevant in the market that they have entered into. But one thing we need to know about the pragmatic rule is that the firm goes in usually without having tested any potential alternatives or done any significant investigation on what entry mode will be workable. So what they usually start with is not the best, because they would not have done enough background checks to ensure that what they are starting with is the best that they can go into the market. So it's mainly somewhat of a trial and error approach, where they start with what they think is feasible, and then they adjust as they go along, depending on the changes that take place. But based on this, enter the strategy rules, which states that the entry mode that the firm selects should be approached with the mindset of a systematic research, comparison, and evaluation of all the possible choices that the firm can use to enter the market. So unlike the pragmatic rule, which does not really start with some kind of systematic evaluation or comparison, the strategy rules mandate the firm to do some level of research and some level of inquiry into the modes that they are choosing and which ones will be plausible for the markets that they are entering into. And an application of this decision rule would be to choose the modes that maximizes the profit contribution or maximizes the return on investment over the strategic planning period that the firm has undertaken, to ensure that once they enter the market, they have the best opportunity and are best positioned to make the highest level of returns, unless things change, right? And this decision is subject to the availability of company resources, because first of all, we need to make sure that the firm has enough resources to be able to undertake whatever best approach is identified by the end of the strategy rule, right? And they also need to be able to determine the level of risk involved, because perhaps the best approach that they may identify, even though they have enough resources to utilize, may be too risky and may be way beyond the limits of the level of risk that the company is strategically willing to take. So risk is also a factor. And they may also think about other non-profit objectives, like Lucy was just talking about. Apple is also enhancing its presence in the Indian market, partly because of what is happening to Huawei and their 5G technology. So it's not mainly about profits at this point, it's also about non-profit objectives. So these three things have to be taken into consideration when firms decide to follow the strategy rules when selecting an entry mode with which to enter a particular market. However, we realize that of the three rules, the two mostly being applied by firms in terms of global marketing are the pragmatic rule and the strategy rule. So as a firm, you need to be able to sit down and decide which rule works for your company, depending on your business model, your international marketing and global marketing objectives, and how much risk you are willing to take, as well as the resources you have to invest and the non-profit objectives as well, because sometimes it's not always about profit. Sometimes firms think about other things in the long run, which short-term profits may not be able to satisfy. So they would rather not make profit in the short term and benefit of certain things in the long term that would ultimately lead to profit maximization and eventual success. And that brings us to the end of the entry modes and strategies that firms can use to enter a foreign market. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to say, any question they want to ask, any comments they want to make before.
Madam, please, mine is a question.
Yes.
I would like to ask, how often do firms pay for the licensure fees or the royalties? Annually, long term, or some pay on commission basis?
It depends on the terms of the agreement and what the franchisor or the licensor wants. Like we established some time ago with McDonald's franchise, McDonald's actually has to own the property that you situate the franchise in.
Okay.
So whatever property that you are using to set up the business has to be owned by them in their name. And I think that's partly one of the reasons why McDonald's is not in Ghana yet. They have not identified the prime property they can own to sell a franchise. But it's not the same with other franchises. So depending on the terms of the agreement you have with the licensor or the franchisor, there may be different requirements of you, including how much you have to pay, how often you have to pay it, and what you are expected to do under the terms of the contract. So I hope you are okay, Kwame.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much, madam.
You're welcome, Kwame.